Well, good evening. Welcome to Stab the Dragon Productions. Eating a little ranch style beans here to start the evening off because I'm here with whiskey review number 14. We're going to be looking at tasting Silver Star 1849 straight bourbon whiskey. Silver Star Spirits is operating out of the Trinity River Distillery here in my hometown, Fort Worth, Texas. A couple of weeks ago, I did a review of Silver Star whiskey, a wonderful whiskey which I highly recommend, and so now it's time to do the Silver Star 1849 bourbon. Mark Luzanon started Silver Star Spirits in 2012. Shortly afterwards, they purchased and repurposed the ranch style beans factory here in Fort Worth. Hence my appetite for the ranch style beans tonight. That factory has been a landmark in Fort Worth since it was constructed in 1913. It's well over 100 years. And now it's the home of an up-and-coming whiskey distillery. I should say spirits distillery because they do vodka as well. One of the unique features of this distillery is a large rainwater collection system that's got huge 13,000 gallon tanks for the rainwater, which is then used to make their spirits. Now, I've lived here in Fort Worth for over 35 years and loved that old ranch style beans facility. When they moved out of the plant in 2007, I was sad, but Trinity River Distillery opened the plant in 2016, and that old landmark still stands proud. The first whiskey that Silver Star Spirits put out on the market a few years ago was Silver Star Spirit Whiskey, and it had some vodka in it. I purchased a bottle, went through it, but it simply wasn't for me. It wasn't that kind of spirit whiskey thing is not real good for my palate anyway. It wasn't bad, but it was thin and not much flavor, and that's what those kind of whiskeys do. And distilleries will do that so they get a revenue stream going early on, because it takes a while to develop their real whiskey or their straight whiskeys or bourbons. So earlier this year, I saw the bottles change. They had dropped the word spirit from the label, and now it was Silver Star whiskey. So I reviewed that whiskey a couple of weeks ago, and it was wonderful. Sweet sipping whiskey. I highly recommend it. Today, however, I'm reviewing their new bourbon, 1849. And this is a straight bourbon, and it debuted actually 2020. And it's already won an award. It came in second place at the 2021 Texas Whiskey Festival. And, it was in the category of bourbon, grain to glass. Garrison Brothers Balmoria won first, and then Balcones Pot Still Bourbon came in third. So Silver Star 1849 came in second place. And I've read another review that reviewer kind of went through 8 different Texas whiskeys, and Silver Star 1849 came in second place out of 8. So it's a highly regarded whiskey here in Texas. So for the history of this bourbon and of the distillery and the physical facilities there, I'm going to give it a 5 out of 5 for history. Now let's talk about marketing and the bottle. I recall seeing a billboard in Fort Worth across the highway from I-35 from the distillery a few years ago, but I've not seen it lately. I haven't been in that part of town in the last couple of years. And so that's where I got the idea of the spirit whiskey, which came out first several years ago, was the billboard, and then I looked for it and got it. But I first saw this bourbon in the liquor stores, I guess 2020, but I really wasn't interested because I hadn't liked their spirit whiskey. But then in 2021, they switched from the spirit whiskey to the regular whiskey, and bought that one, tried it, instantly liked it. So I thought, okay, I'll give the bourbon a shot. So a few weeks ago, I I did do a review of that Silver Star whiskey, and it compares favorably with TX Blended. And I liked it so much that I decided, okay, I'm gonna have to go through the bourbon with this series that I'm doing on Fort Worth whiskeys. So here we go. That's what we're doing tonight. But the marketing point here is that all three of these whiskeys from Silver Star have almost identical bottles and labels. And to me, I kind of wonder if that was a mistake, because people who maybe had tried the earlier spirit whiskey might not realize the name changed, and they might see the bottle and equate the two. So, but anyway, let's look at the bottle here. Bottle is round, clear glass. It's tapered with a more narrow base, wider at the top. Now this label, though, is very cool. It's dark brown. It's got the edges that give it kind of an aged look. It's torn like either parchment or old leather. Big letters, Silver Star, 1849, there in the middle of the star. At the bottom is 45% alcohol by volume and 90 proof for 750 milliliters. On the back is a very nice statement about the, the history of Fort Worth, which this bourbon celebrates. 1849 was the year of the founding of our city, Fort Worth. So it's got this medallion on the back that was the centennial emblem in 1949. So that was for the centennial celebration of Fort Worth. And I don't know how much of that you can see, but it's got a lot of cool stuff on there. It's got the Four Sixes Ranch is listed, and it's got a ranch, kind of a ranch scene there. And I used to work for the owner of the Four Sixes Ranch here in Texas. Picture of the early settlement days. It's got a picture of a B-36 bomber that was made here in the Fort Worth plant. So all in all, this label is very cool. Small raindrop right here that yeah, there you go, says that it's made with Texas rainwater. And nowhere on the bottle does it say distilled in Fort Worth, which causes me to wonder. I'm 99% certain that it's distilled here, because it won that prize in the grained glass category. So I'm real sure it's distilled here. I mean, I know it's aged here, but the fact that it doesn't say distilled on the bottle is kind of a cause for concern. On the back label here, it's got some stuff about the Fort Worth history here. As a whiskey maker and co-owner of Silver Star Spirits, it's with great honor and pride that I introduce Silver Star 1849 Straight Bourbon Whiskey. This first release from a select number of mature bourbon barrels has been patiently resting in our barrel room here in Fort Worth, Texas, the place where the West begins. Appropriately named 1849, this 2020 release is in honor of our Fort Worth home, which was originally formed in 1849 as an army outpost on a bluff overlooking the Trinity River, where millions of cattle were herded on the Chisholm Trail. Thus, this city we call home is known as Cowtown. I invite you to get into the spirit of the Old West and try 1849 on the rocks, neat, or with your favorite mixer. So that's really excellent marketing there, because it just links the bourbon with the history of Fort Worth. So all in all, I'm going to say 5 out of 5 for marketing in the bottle. Third category is composition. Well, these ranch style beans here are comprised of pinto beans and tomato sauce, appropriate spices, some sugar. So the ranch style beans I highly recommend as well. But we're talking about the bourbon tonight. Silver Star Spirits website says that it's mixed with corn, rye, and barley. Well, duh. It's a bourbon. So by law, it's comprised of at least 51% corn, right? But the website also gives a few more details. It's aged in 30-gallon new oak barrels in Texas for just over 3 years. Well, that's good information. So why don't they say distilled in Texas? I don't know. By law, a straight bourbon is aged for 2 years or longer, and this is over 3 years, so there you go. And of course, like I said earlier, it's made with Texas rainwater, but nowhere on the website or bottle does it give the mash bill. The articles that I've read about it don't give the mash bill either, so it's kind of a, it's not a well-known bourbon. It's a small distillery, so that kind of thing is just not out there yet, I guess. So this must be a legit Texas whiskey, certified Texas whiskey, I would imagine, because it won in the grain to glass category. But at the end of the day, there's still two mysteries. Why they don't put distilled in Texas on the product, and why does this whiskey not have the Texas funk? If it's aged for 3 years in Texas, it really ought to have the Texas funk, you would think. And I'll discuss that here in a little bit when we do the nosing and tasting. But my theory is that the rickhouse must be climate controlled. There's another Texas whiskey that I've reviewed in recent months, Witherspoon, that did not have the Texas funk either. And the only thing I can come up with is if you've got a climate controlled rickhouse, then it's not going to get the effect of the Texas summers. But more research is needed. So all in all, composition score, I'm going to say 13 out of 15 points. Color. Here, you can see that it's got a nice red tinged medium amber color. It's got nice oily legs in the glass. So it's really a very nice looking. It's got that rim on the top. This is definitely darker than the whiskey was that I reviewed a couple of weeks ago. So color, I'm going to give 4 out of 5 points. Nosing, my nose is deficient. I just have never been able to smell much of whiskey. Now, scotches, I can usually smell a lot better than bourbons. Bourbons, not so much. It smells sweet, just a little bit. That's about all I'm getting. Ryes, I can usually smell the rye spice, but bourbons, not so much. But so I give it the benefit of the doubt. I'm going to say 8 out of 10 points for the nose. Taste. Sweet caramel with some cinnamon. Yeah, the cinnamon is strong with this one. But again, like I said earlier, there's no Texas funk in here at all. Not getting that at all. But it's not lacking in flavor. This has got really nice flavor. Man, the closest thing that I could relate this to might be Evan Williams Bottled in Bond, maybe. Okay. It's got a big bourbon flavor, and it's got a sharpness to it that's unique, and it's pleasant. I'm not talking about an ethanol sharpness. This is more of a bold flavor, not real subtle. So it's suitable for a Texas whiskey, but it sets its own tone. This does not march in lockstep with other Texas whiskeys. So this is clearly different from other Texas whiskeys, but it's bold. I'm going to give it 20 out of 25 points for taste. The mouthfeel, I'm going to say, is average for a bourbon. Not thin, not real creamy either. The cinnamon bomb really is in the finish. It's got a nice strong cinnamon finish. It's a very nice, well-defined burn. I wouldn't call this a real smooth whiskey. Some people like smooth, but this has an appropriate burn for 90 proof, and a lot of people don't like that. But for me, the burn is part of the pleasure of a good whiskey. Now, there's nothing wrong with the smooth whiskeys either, like some Irish whiskeys or Scotches, or really the Silver Star whiskey that I did a couple of weeks ago. That's a very smooth, sweet whiskey. This is bold, and so it does have a nice, pleasant, friendly burn. So the finish is medium. I can still feel and taste it for a while after sipping on it. So for mouthfeel and finish, I'm going to say 12 out of 15. Price, value, and availability. Total Wine, it's got it for $43.99. Specs listed at $46.31. Goody Goody, $48.99. Now for a craft distillery, putting out something of this quality, I would say the price is worth it. But I would hope to see that price drop to around $40 at some point. That would put it more in direct competition, I think, with the TX bourbon, which they're 90 proof bourbons. I think you can get for around 40. Now, I don't know how widespread this release is, but I've found it in all, three of the main liquor stores that I go to. If you find it, I think it's worth the price. I'll give it a 9 out of 10 for value, because I think it's just a bit higher than it should be. I'd really like to see it come down to about the $40 mark. Should this be a neat or a mixer? I love it neat. I tend to drink all my whiskeys neat. I just don't do cocktails or mixed drinks. But it's bold enough to be used as a mixer without losing its flavor. Some whiskeys you want to use it as a mixer because they're bad neat. Okay, this is really a good, nice, neat drink. But if you do want to put your whiskey in a cocktail, you want it to either hide the flavor because it's bad, or you want it to keep its flavor because it's very good. This one's bold enough to where I think it would keep its flavor. So I'm going to say 5 out of 5 for that. So let's wrap this up with the bonus points, and I'm going to say because this is a high quality product produced in my city, Fort Worth, Texas, it's available in all the liquor stores I frequent for a pretty good price. I'm going to say 5 bonus points. So that gives me a total of 86 points. And again, this whiskey seems to go head to head with the TX bourbon in many ways. So I would hope to have I think my TX bourbon I came in at 85 points for. So I would hope to have a competition sometime this year to see how these Texas whiskeys rank with each other. And there, when you do a head to head, especially if it's blind, then that would really be a good way to judge these whiskeys, because frankly this one got a lot of points for its bottle, for its history, that ranch style bean factory and the cool bottle. Yeah, that may have pushed it ahead of the TX bourbon. My letter grade for this whiskey is A-. And my recommendation, if you like bourbon but are not a fan of the Texas funk, try Silver Star 1849 straight bourbon. If you're interested in drinking around the Texas distilleries, this Trinity River Distillery product of Fort Worth is a must. So I highly recommend this whiskey, and if you want some good beans out of a can, go with ranch style beans. They go well with Silver Star whiskey. Well, that's Stab the Dragon for this episode, number 14 of the whiskey reviews of whiskeys around Texas, Fort Worth. And we will catch you next time out here.